Kept you waiting, huh? Man, it's been a while since we've done one of these, and it turns out we have another guest. Say hello.
What's up, guys? I'm the Jack Mage from A Jack of All Trades. Not to be confused with the Bruce Campbell TV show, but it's nice to be here.
Yep, today we talk about what for some people is the most anticipated game of the year.
Including me. Sorry, I'm just a bit excited.
Yeah, it's Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. So, like Metal Gear Solid 5 itself, this is a two-part review. Consider this the ground zeros of the review as a whole. In this video, we'll be making broad, spoiler-free strokes about the story and background of the game, focusing more on the gameplay than anything else. In a few weeks, we'll discuss the story of the game in great detail, and how it ties in with the rest of the series, over on Jack's channel, which I'll link to here. So Jack, why don't you start things off?
Sure thing. Now, before we talk about this game, an important thing to discuss is some of the events that followed during the game's development. In fact, addressing this is probably inevitable. So we're gonna take you guys back a bit. It's early 2014 and Konami was on top of the world. Ground Zeroes had just been released, they put out a new Castlevania, albeit a terrible one. And probably one of their biggest announcements was a playable demo for a game called PT. A game which would later be announced as a reboot to the famous horror game franchise, Silent Hill. They announced the duo leading it would be Metal Gear Solid director Hideo Kojima and critically acclaimed American film director Guillermo del Toro. They even announced that their leading character would star big-time actor Norman Reedus as the main lead. With this line of fire, it seemed like things at Konami were too good to be true.
And alas, they were.
Unbeknownst to anyone else at the time, there had been a rising power struggle between Kojima and the rest of Konami. This would later result in the falling out between the two parties, and Kojima being forced to step down and cancel his projects. He agreed to the terms to leave so long as he had complete control over this final project in the Metal Gear Solid legacy. The result is presumably the last chapter in the entire series, simply known as Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain.
Kojima's served the industry well for many years. Jack has been a lifelong fan of the Metal Gear series, whereas I only started playing a couple years ago. And we can both attest, from both of those perspectives, that what Kojima has created over the last couple decades is a masterclass series. The varied mechanics and designs in the series are all top-notch, and the stories in these games are even more so. It's all very eccentric, of course, but that only makes the series stand out in our eyes. The weirdness enhances the series' impact rather than detracting from it. Hell, without that trademark weirdness, people wouldn't still be talking about Metal Gear Solid 3's unforgettable moments, Metal Gear Solid 1's memorable locales, or Metal Gear Solid 2's postmodern mindfuck of an ending.
He's built up an incredible legacy over the years, and while he'll probably move on to the indie space, this still feels like the end of an era. So it's pretty weird to say that The Phantom Pain feels like both the best and the worst Metal Gear Solid installment in the series.
It has, without a doubt, the best gameplay in the Metal Gear series by a country mile. It blends Metal Gear Solid elements with other borrowed mechanics and ideas from games like Far Cry and Deus Ex. These new mechanics blend exceedingly well with Kojima's eccentricities and existing mechanics. Imagine Metal Gear Solid 4 or Peace Walker, but with the vast Easter egg-filled open world of Far Cry 2, with bases evocative of the original Deus Ex's design. It all meshes perfectly together to form a game that treads new ground without abandoning its iconic Metal Gear genes.
But some people who played the original series could be turned off because they were used to how linear, direct, and focused the other games were. Whereas the sandbox aspect does tend to make you a bit overwhelmed and not always sure of what to do first sometimes. Me personally though, I liked it. It felt like the first real survival game. When you get spotted and are taking fire, it really feels like a sense of urgency is going through you as you start dodging bullets.
It's really organic. You can spend an absurd amount of time sneaking around, playing with the enemy's heads as you rescue prisoners, kidnap tanks, and then suddenly you take one step too many and BAM! You get spotted, you whip out your assault rifle, hop in a vehicle, and make a daring, explosive escape. There's been a lot of talk in the industry about awesomeness per second, that a short game with tons of meaningful decisions is a lot better than a longer one with more daunting, boring decisions. But here, Kojima threw up his arms and said, why not both? He made a vast game where every mission feels full of interesting potential. You're encouraged to play around and see what style works for you, and the AI diversifies their strategy so that you have to do the same for every mission and base raid. And that leads straight into your base's management.
You can explore and manage your base again and it's awesome, but at the same time, you do have a lot you need to keep track of after a while. Personally, I believe it was done much better in Peace Walker because not only can you micromanage your base and how things progress, but here you also have to keep an eye on the individual morale of each member at your base. Otherwise, it'll start to get low and affect their performances, which starts becoming difficult after a while when your base gets big enough. I can understand if some people don't mind. For me, I just thought it was kind of okay.
Don't mind? Hell, I wholly enjoyed it. Granted, this is coming from someone who enjoys stuff like XCOM and Fallout Shelter, where just about the whole game revolves around managing a base, and making it the best it can be. But it's so well done here. If there's a weapon that you're close to being able to construct, you can allocate base members differently instead of grinding missions over and over again. You can use your resources during missions, build new gear for yourself and your buddies, and even have your Diamond Dogs crew lend you a hand in the field with some sleeping gas or bombardments. And maybe it had to do with the sheer amount of micromanaging I was doing, but morale was never really an issue for me. Sometimes it felt nice to head home, grab a shower, and hang with the guys for a bit before I flew off again. And recruiting men in the field gives you a real incentive to play non-lethally, which is something Metal Gear has always tried to do. It's base management that ties wonderfully into the rest of the game in a non-intrusive, sensible way. But all of this awesome, organic gameplay comes at a really serious cost.
One of the things Metal Gear Solid was most well known for, and, well, often made fun of for, was the cutscenes, which are trimmed down marginally to help with the player immersion in the game. Which is great for most games, but personally I always liked the cutscenes in the Metal Gear Solid series. Granted, they weren't always immersive, but they were still engaging to where you wanted to see what was going to happen and where things were going to go. And there's a little bit of that in here too, but they're no Snake Eater or Guns of the Patriots.
Most of the story is shoved into these cassette tapes, and while they are optional, that's really no excuse to make them so boring. Miller, Ocelot, and the interrogation victim of the day are all so incredibly dull, and the exposition they spill out is just not very interesting. Trying to put the effort into listening to them drone on and on just breaks up the pacing of the rest of the game so badly. And when the game does break into a cutscene, it's in this short, Birdman-esque sequence with barely any dialogue, which I do admire. The cinematography is really good. But think back to how well Guns of the Patriots and Snake Eater managed their cutscenes. Some of the most memorable moments in gaming history happened because of Kojima's careful, iconic direction. Think back to the boss's unforgettable speech at the end of Snake Eater. That couldn't have had the impact it had if it were on an optional cassette tape. But, as I said, this isn't a story discussion video. We'll discuss all of that in Jack's video later on. The Phantom Pain, at least when it comes to gameplay, is more than just a perfect stealth game. It's a Hideo Kojima production, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Subscribe to Jack's channel. His content's been a little slow to come out, but a more in-depth discussion about the game will take place there in a bit. Plus, he's got this great video about how the Les Enfants Terribles project could really happen. Crazy!
Well, with some caveats, but yeah, looking forward to it. In the meantime, I think I'm gonna go play some more Phantom Pain now.
Same here, although there's still an offensive I need to finish. Silent Hill 2 is next. Let's do it!